The last speaker of the session is Keith Jansa. He's the Executive Director of CIO Strategy Council, and he has significant experience working on various standards and standards organization at national and international level.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Again, to Digital Catapult and to NRC, thank you for the invitation to speak here. I'm going to talk about a key ingredient to implementing ethical AI, and given the conversation that we've had thus far, you can substitute the word ingredient for tool in terms of what's needed in order to effectively implement ethical AI and grow the digital economy as we see it today. In terms of the CIO Strategy Council, we bring together the foremost forward-thinking CIOs across the country, both from the private and public sector. It's a collaboration between the private and public sector. There's recognition that in order to transform the ICT ecosystem, that it's going to take both sectors to collaborate together, and in a way where, through an organization like ourselves, we share best practices, but then we capitalize on national initiatives to effectively create that change. So these are your CIOs. They are the ones procuring these technologies. By bringing a group like this together, it has a significant influence on the way in which we can shape society and the way in which we want to articulate the rules associated with things like ethics when it comes to artificial intelligence. So we are, in fact, we're innovators. We're embracing digital. We're embracing change in such a way to really leverage the benefits of what can be done to the digital economy here in Canada. Why we exist? Why did we put a group together of private public sector CIOs? We are only a year and a half old, and it was a dire need recognizing, consider, I'll give you an example. We are talking about AI, we're talking about the implementation of it, the deployment of it. We all very well know that in terms of where AI is being used, it's in very low risk areas, because essentially nobody wants to apply it necessarily to high risk areas because there's too much of a risk. And fundamentally, why is that risk there? Is because we haven't had national consensus or a dialogue around what are the appropriate rules to govern data, what are the appropriate rules to govern the deployment of artificial intelligence. So no company is taking that risk on for the high benefit areas of which we could deploy AI, because no company wants to necessarily be in the news. We're very much aware of companies that are currently in the news because of issues with data and breaches and those sorts of things. So the reason we are and why we exist is to effectively create the change necessary and establish the foundational rules required to put us in a position to deploy these technologies in a way that we as a society agree is acceptable. So when you talk about these key ingredients or ingredient to implementing AI, we have a group championing a number of national initiatives, sharing those best practices, informing what can drive technology adoption. At the same time, we are developing standards and guidelines for the ethical design and use of artificial intelligence, specifically around automated decision systems. And we're using a globally recognized, reliable, consistent standards development process that is third-party verified. So there was Ian Stewart at the beginning made an opening remark around Standards Council of Canada. We're in the latter stages of becoming an accredited standard development organization here in Canada to develop national standards in these areas to effectively create the necessary foundation for this digital transformation to occur. And for companies like those that are out in this room and around society to deploy these technologies. How are we effectively doing that as well? We're establishing national and international partnerships. A group like this and having relationships between Canada and the UK is extremely strategic, and it's extremely important when you consider technologies and the way in which we want to deploy them here in our country. Well, likewise, we want our companies to be able to export these technologies to other countries, which makes this so significant in that we can create these sort of partnerships to create an environment where not only the Canadian economy or the UK economy is benefiting, but the global economy at large. And so we are a founding member of the Open Community for Ethics and Autonomous Intelligent Systems, OCEANIS. I'm happy to say that BSI, the Britain Standards Institute, is a founding member as well with ourselves. So in terms of having the ties necessary, you have it here with research between NRC and Digital Catapult. From a standards side, in terms of establishing what those effective rules are, we have it between BSI and the CIO Strategy Council. Having these effective dialogues and collaboration is key to having responsible AI deployed and our technologies implemented. The last piece, and an ingredient that should also be discussed, and it was mentioned in a few other earlier presentations, is addressing the demand for that talent. We are going to go through a wave of change. You know, the future of work, the way in which work is potentially displaced, the types of skills needed in the workplace when AI becomes mainstream, which in some areas it pretty much has, it's going to require skills. I'm not going to say skills gap, but I'm going to say there's a huge demand for that talent, which will create an essential gap in this area. And what we're doing there is partnering with post-secondary education institutions to create an environment, again, to bring these students into the workforce early, to develop not only the hard skills of machine learning and AI and those types of skills, but also the softer skills that we're looking for in terms of critical thinking and in terms of creative leadership, thinking outside the box, being able to say, okay, I not only can code, but I can think about the business and the opportunities of where a solution or an application like this could work. So I talked about us developing standards in the area. Our accreditation, the point I want to make here is that the accreditation is significant in that the way in which a standard is developed, there's many standards that exist. You know, you have your own company standards, you got industry association standards, industry standards, etc. The accreditation is significant in that the way in which a standard is developed is just as important as the standard itself. So by having multi-stakeholders collaborate with diverse interests around the table, developing this national consensus as a country is significant in order to achieve the adoption of not only the standard, but the technologies that go behind it. So it's extremely rewarding to be able to be in a position now to say we're in that latter stage of becoming an accredited organization and one that will be able to effectively develop these national standards in Canada. So it's really transformation through collaboration. And essentially, in terms of ethical AI and implementing and deploying these technologies, collective action is needed. That's why we are here. So it's about defining the right rules, implementing the right practices, and adopting the right standards. And at the end of the day, it's about the prosperity of not only Canada, but the UK in terms of who's in this room.